this whole business, as you know, it's done through relationships, right? And if people don't know you exist and what it is that you do and that they can do business with you, they won't.
John, thank you for joining me on our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host over here, Matt Kamp at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine an industry spotlight on experts like yourself, hear your inspiring stories and how you see the world evolving in real estate. So today, really excited to welcome on Jonathan Barbera here. You're the founder of Prime Wealth Academy, which I know helps real estate flipping companies acquire higher margin deals. You personally have flipped hundreds of homes and also renovated over 1,000 houses. Pretty amazing experience, and have an expertise on streamlining real estate acquisitions to create a more profitable flipping company. So, John, welcome on.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to have you, man. So I know you told me a little bit about your background and how you were originally grew up in Argentina, right? And
Mhm.
immigrated over here. Like, tell us more about your story growing up, and then how you got into real estate.
Yeah, so I was born in Argentina, and around 7 years old, my dad wanted to chase the American dream because we were broke as hell in Argentina. So we hopped on a plane, flew over to landed in New York. We came on a visitor's visa, which is good for 90 days. So 20 years later, we kind of overstayed our welcome. So what that means is that I grew up in this country as an illegal immigrant. So I didn't have all the options that an American would have, right? Yeah, I
Mhm.
couldn't drive, I couldn't get a job, I couldn't do a lot of those things. So it didn't force me to drop out of high school, but I knew I didn't have a path in school. So I dropped out of high school anyway, and I went into construction, single family residential. I did that from the age of 15. So I had a lot of experience renovating houses and all that. And that's when I came across real estate investors,
Mhm.
and they're like, I bumped into this guy. We did a few houses for him, and I was like, man, what is it that you do? Pulls up in a nice Cadillac, always smelling all clean and everything. And I'm over here, 5 in the morning, putting on like ripped jeans to go to work. And he's like, oh, I'm a real estate investor. I buy houses, fix them up, and flip them. I was like, well, I fix them up. So, like, what is it that you do? He's like, well, I buy them. I was like, all right. I was like, cool. I need to learn more about
Tell me
this because
more.
I already
Yeah.
know how to fix the house. Right. So I was
Right.
like, I need to
Hard
learn how
part.
to buy. Yeah. So I started kind of just self educating. This was like 13 years ago. So YouTube wasn't what it is now. Like, you didn't have the kind of education information. The only RIA I had in New York was 45 minutes away from me,
Mhm.
and it was full of realtors. I mean, it was a RIA, Real Estate Investment Association, but it was just realtors.
Mhm.
And nobody wanted to help you. I mean, New York is very cutthroat, so there was nobody there wanting to help me. But I still kind of stumbled across, did a few things, tried to do my first deal, got it under contract, screwed that up. Didn't have buyers and all that, so I screwed that up. And then I started researching. I was like, all right, New York sucks for this. Taxes were really high, home values were really high, rents were really low.
Mhm.
So it was like it wasn't the best market for rentals and for buying real estate.
Mhm.
So I did some research, found Texas. Texas was strong, didn't take a hit during the '08 crisis. So packed up everything that could fit in the little Chevy Cobalt with my wife, and we drove down to San Antonio, and that's where I started my business. And that was about 12 years ago, and built a real estate investment business. I started
Mhm.
coaching about almost 2 years ago now,
Nice.
and it's been awesome ever since.
Amazing, man. I love to hear that. So I think you touched on something there that's super valuable for our audience around doing that first deal, and said you
Mhm.
kind of screwed up the dispo side of that. The once
Yeah,
you have the
yeah,
property, how do you think through the cash buyer side if you're going to wholesale? So can you
right.
maybe tell us? I know you've talked about the value of understanding your market and your buyers first. Like, can you kind of tell me more about that and like how you go about that process?
Yeah, so I mean that's something that I kind of learned later on. When you start in real estate, and I mean this,
Mhm.
everybody just talks about if you find the deal, the buyers are there, and it's like when you're starting off, you don't even know what is a deal, right? Like a seller just saying yes to what? Oh, 70% minus repairs. All right, 70% of what? The ARV. What's the ARV? what are the repairs, right? Like there's so
Hmm.
many things. Like it's simple to hear it, but then when you actually go do it, it's like all these numbers are just hypotheticals at the end of the day. And when I got that property on the contract, I was doing a strategy that's called 25 to 1. This came from a guy, Dean Graciosi. He
Hmm.
was big real estate guru back in the day. And it's called 25 to 1, where you submit 25 50% offers on the MLS to get one contract, right? So you burn through realtors very quickly with that. Trust me.
Hmm.
I learned that very quickly, but I did get an offer accepted. And at that time, I got the offer accepted, and I was like, well, I'm not going to buy it. Like I can't afford this house. And it was at 50%. And I put it on Craigslist. I had a buyer that he said he was interested. So I set up the appointment. He flaked on me. And then the agent was like, really getting at me. So I was like, I just canceled the contract. I was like, look, I'm not trying to screw over the seller or the agent or anybody. So I was like, let me just back out of it. Um, and then, I mean, it took me years to learn kind of like the model that I started following now,
Hmm.
which is you need to build your buyers list first, and I know sometimes it just seems a little taboo because nobody talks about it that way. But when you build your buyers list first, what I realize is like I don't need to know ARV. I don't need to know repairs. You're gonna tell me what market I should be marketing in, what area of town, what type of houses. Like it cuts down on my marketing costs. It cuts down on the guesswork. And if I need help, you're gonna go with me to the house to run the numbers, negotiate it, get it on the contract because you want it, right? And then you're gonna teach me how to do it. So building the buyers list first was really where I unfortunately it took me years to learn that, but during those years, it was a struggle for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you're going about doing that, how do you start to find those buyers? Like, tell us more of, say, there's probably a good number of people watching this who are
Mhm.
getting out there. They might maybe focusing on the acquisition side, which is great. But like, while they're doing that, need to think through the dispo side, like you said, where can they start on like just even building that cash buyers list, building those relationships?
So, I mean, by far, hands down, the best way to do it is networking events. I mean, you got to go to every single networking event in your city consistently. So, most people, when they get started, they go to a networking event when it's convenient. You got to make it your priority because the way I look at it is this whole business, as you know, it's done through relationships, right?
Hmm.
And if people don't know you exist and what it is that you do and that they can do business with you, they won't. They won't do business with you. They don't know that you're even in this business, right?
Hmm.
So you got to make sure you're getting out to networking events and you're talking to as many people as possible, not just the people you already know that's comfortable. You got to keep meeting new people. And when you meet them, it's not can I add you to your buyers list? Because that's pretty much what everybody does. And I hate dispo. I mean, my dispo takes all of like 20 minutes to dispo property right now. Like I'm not those guys that's like blast the deal and hope for the best. I'm more about like get to know your buyers,
Hmm.
right? I'm a buyer. Okay, what are you buying? Well, I buy fix and flips on this side of town. Really? What side don't you like? Well, I don't like this side. Because also when you talk to buyers, what do you buy? Oh, anything that makes sense. I hope you do. Like that's a very genius answer. Like, but what are
Right.
the specifics? So you got to like really get to know them and build that relationship. Also to realize that maybe they're not real buyers; they're just aspiring. And those people are dangerous because then you get a property on the contract, you think you're good, you go bring it to this person, and they're not ready, or
Hmm.
they need to bring their contractor, they need to bring this person, they need to bring that person, and you got a seller living in the house. That's not going to slide, right? Like you need to know your numbers, you need to know like all these things. And by you I mean you as the buyer. They need to
Hmm.
know their numbers. So I want to build a buyers list specifically with buyers that know and understand what it is that they're doing. So my target is buyers that do no less than 7 deals a year. A buyer that's doing no less than 7 deals a year knows the areas, they know their numbers, they have the money. They can handle more than one deal at once. Any buyers that do less than that, what we consider those are second tier buyers.
Hmm.
Second tier buyers, I still work with them. I have a lot of them, but they're not. I'm not going to build a marketing campaign around my second tier buyers because those are kind of hit or miss buyers. You know, it's like if you
Hmm.
catch them during the right moment, then you got yourself a solid buyer.
Hmm.
But if it's not the right moment, you got
Yeah.
yourself uh, into trouble because now you got a lead, you got a deal on the contract that nobody wants. So, I want to make sure that when I when I get a property on the contract, I'm going to do something with it. So that's my primary VIP buyers. I know exactly what they want. I know the level of rehab they're willing to take on, not price point, but level, right? Like, are
Hmm.
you in San Antonio, in Texas? I don't want to do foundation. I don't want to do electrical. I don't want to do all these. Now I understand what type of home this person's going to want. So if I get a house that's like near a tear down, they're not going to take it. Right. So I
Hmm.
get to really understand what my buyers want. So then when I go even negotiate with the seller, I can negotiate with so much certainty and confidence because I know that anything above this price, this guy's going to take. Right. Because
Hmm.
they already gave me all their numbers. I already know what it is that they're looking at. I already know how they run their estimates and everything. So it makes it much easier for me to get the deal done.
Yeah. I love your positioning on how you deal with kind of multiple tiers of the spire versus spire. Like that's a
Yeah.
great way to think about it. And then even in general going out too, like really using it as a way to like you said, build relationships first. Have that kind of VIP short list and really
Yeah.
focus on what they're looking for. I mean, reverse engineering that's going to save you a ton of marketing dollars. So love the thought process on that. Now, I know going into it as well, you've talked about like, hey, how you really teach solo investors and help them
Mhm.
bring, only spend, build a lifestyle, I'd say, around doing quality of deals over quantity.
Yeah.
And really leading to kind of this 9 pillar system that you have talked
Mhm.
about how to really generate consistent deal flow using the system. So, can you maybe walk us through? I know that's a big tall thing to tackle, but give us a little bit of a crash course of that 9 pillar playbook would be fantastic.
Sure, sure. So this whole playbook came out of the whole thing that I don't want a business that generates that needs to generate 10, 15, 20 deals a month just to be successful, right?
Hmm.
And when you're generating I had a business that size, and when you're generating 10, 15, 20 deals a month, you're managing a business, right? You're managing
Hmm.
people, training, oversight. I mean, you're constantly working on the business. That's fine if that's something you want to do. That's not something I like to do. I learned afterwards when I kept like just getting burnt out. It got to a point where I hated real estate, man. Like
Hmm.
it got to a point where it's like I got up in the morning and I was like, I, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to get.
Yeah.
It felt like work at that point, right? Like I just didn't want to do it anymore. So then, because we were getting $6,000 wholesales, $10,000 wholesale, so it's like you can't really sustain a business off of little hits like that. You got to get a lot of those, or start getting big hits. So that's when I started kind of like breaking down our process, like what's made us successful and all this. And what I realized is specializing. When you
Hmm.
specialize on something, you can be the best at it, but you don't know what to specialize when you don't understand your market. So, a quick breakdown: pillar number one is understanding your market. This is what is the median price point in your market month over month consistently. Is it going up? Is it going down? What's the market doing? Months of inventory. If months of inventory are going up, that means the market's cooling down, right? If it's cooling down, I'm not saying it's a bad market. It's just a different market, and you're gonna have to target different types. You gotta have to be maybe a little bit more aggressive with how you go after deals. You're gonna have to submit lower offers. Your buyers are gonna be a little bit more shaky. You want stronger buyers at that point. Or like I have a few students in St. Louis. St. Louis is a really hot market. So if you're in a really hot market, the marketing changes, right? Now you can be a little bit more aggressive. You can be more aggressive with your flips. You can be more aggressive with your rentals because there's more of a demand in the market. So people, if you don't understand that, you don't understand what's going on, you're going to be doing marketing and not understanding why it's not working, which was our issue. We would get so frustrated, man. We were spending thousands and thousands of dollars every single month, like tens of thousands of dollars every single month on marketing, and it wasn't even taking care of itself. Like we were
Hmm.
starting to go negative month over month. And it was like, what the hell is going on? And then when we start researching the market and we start looking at all these things, like, oh, the market shifted. You know, we weren't aware of that. Um, so by doing pillar number one, you get to really understand where are the spots. Where are the spots that, like, when people ask me, like, "Hey, John, should I flip this house? Should I keep it as a rental?" I'm like, "What does pillar number one say?" Right? Because that data is going to tell you if you should be flipping it or keeping it as a rental. I'm not going to tell you. You should. The data needs to tell you, because that's how you make money, is with the data, not with you guessing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you guessing, and I don't want you needing to ask other people. So that's pillar number one. It gives you that certainty of where the market is going, where it's at right now, where it's been, what's the trajectory, and all that. Pillar number two is building your buyers list. So I teach you everything from even using DealMachine to build your cash buyers, because there are times that you get a deal that's like, oh shit, I don't have a buyer on this, but I know this seller's really motivated. So I'm gonna get in there and I'm gonna look for cash buyers in those areas, and then I'm gonna start calling them up. Right. So, and I'm gonna use the same process, but you're going more after specific people that have bought in those areas. So I teach you, like, the scripts and all those things, how to like manage and run your buyers and your primary buyers list, secondary buyers list. So
Mm-hmm.
you understand when you do your marketing. Pillar one and two, I call them the science and the art of real estate, because your buyers list also tells you, as an investor, what's working in the market. So
Mm-hmm.
I just moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm going to a networking event. I want to speak to fix and flippers and buy and hold investors, because I want to see, where are you buying your rentals? Why buy them on this side of Chattanooga or Tennessee or wherever they're buying? Why is that? Because that's where I'm getting the cash flow. That's where most of the rents are being. That's where the quality of tenant is. Right? Here's where the flips are. Here's where, because it's not always, every time I see somebody blast a deal that's like, this is good for a flip, rental, Airbnb. I'm like, okay, buddy, I'm sure it's the holy grail of deals out
Right.
there. Yeah, you got it. And it's like, usually it's not. Usually it makes sense for one strategy where it makes the most sense for. Because even you as a wholesaler, I don't wholesale a deal the same way to a buy and hold investor as I do to a fix and flip investor, especially with the way interest rates are now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my fix and flippers are paying more than my buy and hold investors, which that used to not be the case. Right. So I need to know that as a wholesaler, what are buyers doing and why? It helps me understand like what the strategies are. Pillar number three, I teach you personal branding, because nowadays, if you don't have a Facebook profile, you don't exist. Right. And whenever
Mm-hmm.
anybody meets you and everything like that, they want to look you up on Facebook, see if you exist. And in real estate, Facebook is big. I get people like TikTok and Instagram and all that. It's cool. But a lot of business gets done on Facebook. I've raised millions of dollars in private money through Facebook. So I teach you, and it's simple. It's nothing like how to be an influencer. It's just have a presence where people know you exist and what it is that you do. So that's pillar number three. And I call that the foundation, because if you nail those three pillars, anything that happens above, you can always restructure your business and rebuild whenever
Mm-hmm.
needed, right? Because you have the foundation like a house. You do the foundation right, the house can burn down, you scrape it, you rebuild, right? But the foundation needs to be strong. If it's not, you gotta start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So then I take you to pillar number four, which is how to build your CRM, manage your leads, and all of that. It's one of the things that we neglect the most as investors. But then pillar number five is how to do marketing. And the reason pillar five is marketing, as you can see, is like, you're not ready to do marketing if these four pillars are not set up yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because without pillar one and two, you don't even know where to do marketing. Without pillar four, you don't even have a way to manage your marketing when you're doing it. You speak to a
Mm-hmm.
seller, they're not ready right now. How are you going to manage that one to close it maybe 3 6 months from now? Right. And so many of our deals are follow-ups. They're done, they're closed months later. They're not closed right now. Not every
Right.
deal gets contracted in the moment. So you need your CRM. Pillar five, like I said, I teach you how to market, how to pull lists, understand why you want certain lists, the power of them, where to pull them, how to combine them, how to stack them, like how to add multiple motivators so you understand what you're going after. Pillar six, it's all sales. Pillar six, I teach you how to speak to sellers. Most people that I've learned in this business, they start with direct mail, and which is why you hemorrhage so much money. It's not that direct mail doesn't work, it works great. It's just that you suck, right? Because you're new. You haven't really spoken to enough sellers, so you don't know
Hmm.
how to ask the right questions. You don't know how to pull out that motivation. You don't know how to really like dig in on the phone so you can develop a good rapport and good connection and determine motivation. So when you set the appointment, not only do they show up to the appointment, they don't stand you up, but like they're receptive and you're able to, when you go to the appointment, get the property on the contract, right? So pillar 6 is all about that. It goes over how to handle a call, how to handle
Hmm.
the appointment, and how to handle the offer. The offer, the way I teach it is very simple. It's like if you did the beginning part correctly, the offer is the easiest part of the whole situation, because at that point you're not saying, "Hey, I'm giving you 120 grand." What you're saying is like, "Hey, I'm solving all of these problems that we discussed. Here's the
Hmm.
paperwork so we can get that done."
Hmm.
Right? It has nothing to do with the price. It has to do with the solution that you're providing them. And so many people, they're like, "Oh, they didn't like my price." No, you didn't give them a good confidence on the solution you're saying you're providing. That's
Yep.
what they didn't like, right? Because they don't feel comfortable with you. And so that's the build phase, because it's broken down to three phases. So those three pillars are the build phase. That's where you're building your whole business up. And then phase three, the last one, is the money phase. So the pillar number 7, I teach you the dispo side, how to dispo property, how to get the right buyers, how to get the most for that property. A lot of people simply don't make more money on their wholesales because they don't ask for more.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous, but like we have probably 4x what our wholesales were just by simply asking for more money and
Wow.
letting the buyer tell us whether it fits or not. It's their decision at the end of the day, not ours. If it works for them, they're going to say yes. If it doesn't, they're going to tell me what does work for them, and then I get to decide whether I want to take that or renegotiate with the seller.
Hmm.
Also, how to make sure the deal closes. A lot of wholesalers, they get a property on the contract and they don't want to speak to the seller at all anymore, because it's like, I don't want to say anything to piss them off or make them change their mind, right? And it's like, that's actually what pisses them off and makes them change their mind, is that you ghost them after you
Hmm.
contract it. So I teach you like everything, like the whole process from contract to close on that one. Pillar number 8, we go into niche lists. This is where we make the bulk of our money. So this month so far, we're on pace to make 150 grand on 4 properties that we're doing this month.
Wow.
Right. So that's the business I like. A lot of money, little bit of deals. Right.
Hmm.
So managing those 4 to close, it's not that hard. Finding 4 buyers is not that hard. Getting everything structured is not that hard. Right. But the profits are big. So you want to make sure that when you do a deal, it's not, I don't chase anything under like 15 grand. I let those go, right? Kind of like fishing. It's those small fish. Let
Hmm.
the big wholesale companies trip over those. I rather go after the big ones that require more of my time and more of my solutions. So the whole thing with pillar number 8 is, the bigger the problem you solve, the bigger the profit you're going to make.
Hmm.
Right. So we do a lot of pre foreclosures, pre probates that are stacked with maybe vacant properties, tax delinquents. So we get very creative. It's a very niche list. It's very small. So instead of it being hundreds or thousands of properties, it's probably less than 100 properties, but they're very, very specific properties. So when we go after them, the way we go after them is very meticulous, and we'll go directly to, like, I mean, we'll have people crying on the phone with us because of how much pain they're going through, right? So but that means that it's probably going to be a tremendous deal. So that's where I teach you pillar number 8. And then pillar number 9 is scale. Here I teach you how to bring on VAs, how to hire an acquisition manager if you need somebody in house that you want to take a step back and start maybe focusing on your flips,
Hmm.
or just take a step back, period. So right now, like, the reason I'm able to move to Tennessee and keep my business in San Antonio is because I have an acquisition manager that runs the day to day down there. Right. So I just work with him and he closes everything that I need done in San Antonio. So it allows me to do pretty much, what I'm doing now, whatever, whatever it is I
Yeah.
want, having cool conversations. So
Uh,
I hope, I know that was fast, but I try to make
That
sure
was
to
great.
nail
Yeah.
everything.
Amazing, man. Yeah, I mean, we could do a follow up on every single one of those pillars. Like that's a
Yes.
nine master classes right there. But yeah, it's something. I love to hear your framing around the bigger the problem you solve, the bigger the value you're bringing, the bigger the paycheck, the bigger the deal, right?
Hmm.
I know we're up on time here, which is awesome. Like I'd love to have you back on. The one follow question I did have on that first pillar. So talking about understanding your market like that, how do you go about digging into that data? Like I'd love to know how you collect that and how you think through that first pillar.
So a lot of it, I mean, you gotta at first you gotta develop the systems for your area. In San Antonio, in Texas, you can get a lot of it from the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. They have a ton of information, not just for Texas, but they have it for a lot of major cities in the U.S.
Hmm.
That they have a lot of the median price points, months of inventory, and all of that. My favorite source is the actual MLS. So become friends with an agent. I tell all my students that if you're really wanting to be successful in real estate, you should get your license because to me having being licensed in real estate, it's just the whole process. It's like you're getting into real estate but you only do one part, not the other, right? It's like do the whole thing, right? Being licensed gives you access to so much more information, so much more data, so much more opportunities. So we pull a lot of that data from the MLS because we download a lot of records from there. So we're doing a lot of that stuff. We're pulling like the zip codes, the price sold. So we're trying to determine like what are the hottest price points. That means the price points with the lowest months of inventory. So
Yep.
what that means is like that's the most competitive price point. If I can get a property in the hottest zip code within the hottest price point, my chances of flipping that house quickly go through the roof, right?
Yep.
My chances of maybe pushing the comps is much better. But if I'm seeing that the months of inventory are starting to drop, then I can start factoring like, all right, or the months of inventory are starting to rise. I can factor in like, all right, maybe this is going to take a few more weeks to sell because it's not as hot as it used to be.
Yep.
So we're pulling all this data off the MLS, but whatever source you decide to pull from, just make sure it's a source that you stick with month over month. Don't pull from a source this month and then from a different source next month because they're all going to be different.
Hmm.
And with this data, it's not like we need to be to the like nuts and bolts about it. Like I don't care if it's 2.1 months of inventory or 2.3 months of inventory. It's like got it. It's around 2 months of inventory, right? But
Hmm.
if you keep switching sources, your
Yeah.
data is going to be kind of
There's
wonky,
no
right?
baseline.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so pick a source and try to stick to it. Closest thing that you can get to the MLS, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. Man, this was phenomenal, dude. I really appreciate you coming on here, John. I mean, I think
Of
people get
course.
so much out of this. So, how can our audience get more involved with you too? I know you mentioned like the Facebook community you got and a couple
Mhm.
things there.
Yeah, so I have a Prime Wholesaling Method Facebook group. It's private. I go live there once a week. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called An Investor's Journey, where on there I
Mhm.
just put out videos every single week of how we build our business. I have a whole, I think it's like a 45-minute training on the 9 pillars in there if anybody wants to check it out.
Nice,
But yeah, I mean, anywhere on social media, just hit me up. I'm always helping. Anybody that needs my help, I'm there.
fantastic. Appreciate you being such a great resource for our community, John. So, thank you
Yeah.
again. Really enjoyed this.
I appreciate you for having me, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to everyone watching, is Matt Camp over here with Deal Machine, and happy deal finding.